Welcome to the world of werewolves. Subscribe now. The Lunar Tide Paradox, the Epic of Symbiotes. The First Blood, Tainted Tide, the Rift of the Gears. Chapter 4, Reflection in the Morgue. Matilda's gear, shaped birthmark. The rain in New York was corroding the outer walls of the Silver Cross Gene Purification Center. Kylan pulled her hood low and blended in with the crowd in white coats, walking towards the side door. She deliberately slowed her breathing, using her werewolf spirit sense of smell to block out the pungent smell of disinfectant. The gear, shaped birthmark on her palm, slightly heated up in front of the quantum access control. 3 months ago, Sarah had sent her an anonymous email with a forged employee access chip attached. Number 0749, welcome to Zone B3. When the mechanical female voice sounded, Kellen's fingertips swiped across the access control sensor, and a gear-shaped blue light flashed across her retina. The refrigerators on both sides of the corridor hummed. Each refrigerator door was embedded with a gear-shaped numbered plate. When she counted to the 40-second corner, she finally saw the refrigerator marked 0428. The fluorescent lights in the morgue flickered. Kylan put on the forged latex gloves, and the metal handle became warm from her body temperature. The moment the drawer slid out, the refrigerated gas steamed into white mist. She held her breath and her eyes fell on the gear-shaped birthmark on the corpse's palm, exactly the same as the one pulsating on her own palm. Matilda Drake. She read the name on the work permit, and a taste of rust filled her throat. The girl in the photo had amber-colored pupils similar to Leon's, and there was still a hint of baby fat at the corners of her mouth. It was hard to imagine that this face would be engulfed by the black mist during the werewolf spirit riot at Notre Dame in 2016. When Kylan lifted the white cloth, a clicking sound of gears turning suddenly came from the corpse's chest. She instinctively took a half step back, and her golf claws had pierced through the gloves. Memory materialization was triggered by fear. The moment the pocket watch gears turned into a scalpel, Kylan heard her own intense heartbeat. It was the echo of the Icelandic blizzard in 2021. The touch of her mother, Ava, stuffing the pocket watch into her swaddle before her death suddenly became as clear as yesterday. The moment the blade cut through the skin, fluorescent green body fluid seeped out. The gear structure inside the corpse glowed coldly under the emergency light, and each tooth was engraved with the same binary code as her birthmark. Warning: unauthorized personnel in the dissection area. The infrared scanner on the ceiling lit up red. Kylan spun around to avoid the laser beam, but the scalpel flew towards the wall during the collision. With a clang, the blade nailed into a document. The title, Symbiote Gene Contamination Report, prominently displayed the Silver Cross's gear-shaped badge. The moment she tore off the work permit chip, a quantum after-image suddenly appeared on her retina. Serena's ice sculpture cracked for the first time in the Arctic, and the blue light seeping from the crack resonated with the chip frequency of Matilda's work permit. "They're mass-producing gear-shaped birthmarks," Kylan murmured, her fingertips stroking the Silver Cross brand on the corpse's wrist. It was a mandatory mark after the implementation of the Supernatural Creature Registration Act. Under the gear-shaped silver ornament, electric arc patterns similar to those on the Thunder Core pendant were faintly visible under the skin. The sound of heels tapping the ground came from the distance. She stuffed the work permit fragments into her windbreaker pocket, and gear-shaped spots of light lit up in her Volf eyes in the dark, precisely capturing the quantum after-images of 3 Silver Cross soldiers. Abnormal heat source in the third refrigeration area. A metallic voice came from the ventilation duct. Kylan rolled over and hid under the morgue bed, seeing 3 pairs of military boots with gear patterns stop in front of the refrigerator. The moment the soldier pulled the drawer, she bit the tip of her tongue, using the pain to suppress the restlessness of her werewolf spirit. This was the pain anchor mentioned in Serena's Arctic log, which could temporarily block the tracking of the Gene Lighthouse. Another gear-shaped birthmark. The leading soldier used a silver dagger to lift the palm of the corpse. The gear patterns distorted into a black mist shape in the reflection of the blade. Kylan held her breath as she watched the dagger engraved with the initials MD stab into the corpse's heart. The gear structure suddenly burst out with blue light, projecting an after-image of the Notre Dame rose window on the wall. She recognized it as Leon's silver dagger. 5 years ago, he had used this knife to cut open the werewolf spirit that had devoured his sister. memory materialization was triggered uncontrollably. Kylan's eyes flashed with the fire in 2016. Serena's Volf form turned in front of the altar. The black rose tattoo split open as her hair stood up, revealing the same gear-shaped birthmark as hers underneath. Matilda's work permit floated over from the black mist. The number 0428 burned on her retina, coinciding with the heartbeat frequency of the Arctic ice sculpture. Something's wrong. The gear structure of this symbiote is more complete. The soldier's walkie-talkie suddenly crackled with static. Kylan took the opportunity to throw out a chain condensed from the pocket watch gears, creating blue-white electric arcs as it scraped across the metal floor. When she shattered the glass of the emergency exit, she heard an astonished gasp from behind. Her Volf claws have human fingerprints. On the rainy streets of New York, Kylan hid in an abandoned quantum church. The stained glass windows faded to gray-white in her wolf eyes, except for the gear-shaped birthmark on the Virgin Mary statue's palm, which was as clear as ever. She spread out the blood-stained work, permit fragments. The crack in the ice sculpture reflected inside the chip was expanding. Serena's consciousness suddenly came through the pendant. When the gears start devouring memories, you must become the first notch to engage. The rustling sound of the pocket watch gears echoed in her chest. Kylan then noticed that the scalpel had cut through her cuff, revealing a black rose tattoo on the inside, exactly the same as the pattern at the left corner of Serena's eye. The roar of a Silver Cross airship came from the distance. She pressed the work permit fragments against the birthmark, and quantum codes spread like a spider web to her arm. Memory fragments of Matilda suddenly emerged in her palm. A teenage boy in a vampire's dress was braiding a black rose wreath for his sister, with the Notre Dame rose window in the background. Leon ... she murmured, pressing her chest. The blood-colored chain tattoo was slightly hot. Quantum after images flickered in the rain curtain. She saw 3 versions of herself from different timelines. One was trembling and gripping the scalpel in the morgue, one was knocking on the crack of the ice sculpture in the Arctic, and another was standing on the starship deck, with the birthmark on her palm becoming the origin of the cosmic coordinates. The gear-shaped birthmark suddenly let out a sharp beep. Kylan stumbled and leaned against the holy water font, seeing her reflection in the puddle split in half. The blood vessels under her human skin glowed blue, and gear patterns were growing on the Volf fur-covered arm. The surveillance video from the morgue replayed on her retina. The moment the Volf claws with human fingerprints tore apart the mechanical werewolf, she finally understood why the Silver Cross called symbiotes God's mistake. Because their genes were engraved with both the gears of the werewolf, spirit, and human fingerprints. Are you looking for your kind? A hoarse female voice came from the shadows. Sarah Carter walked out, holding a smoking Leica camera. The lens still had traces of being burned by werewolf spirit energy. The work permit number 0428 on the reporter's chest overlapped with Matilda's. Kylan then noticed the silver ornament around her neck. It was a Silver Cross logo transformed with gears and Volf claws, exactly like the uprising badge of the Shadow Clan. They're extracting the technology to materialize werewolf spirit memories. Sarah stuffed a photo into Kylan's palm. On the still wet photo paper, the gear-shaped birthmark of Matilda's corpse was absorbing moonlight. The murals in the grey-white city discovered underground in London last month. The speed at which those memory graffiti disappeared is directly proportional to the symbiote awakening rate. Quantum after images glowed at the edge of the photo. Kylan saw Serena's ice sculpture sighing in the Arctic, and Ava's after image reaching out to touch the crack. She clenched the work permit fragments, and the edge of the gear pierced her palm. Blood dripped onto the gear-shaped birthmark of the Virgin Mary statue, and a semi-transparent black rose actually bloomed. Go to Cambridge, Sarah pointed to the church dome, where there was a faded mural depicting a werewolf spirit and a human holding hands and turning a gear. Lucas's laboratory hides Ava's last log and also ... The alarm interrupted her words. The Silver Cross's Gene Lighthouse projected a huge gear in the sky, and each tooth locked onto the position of the symbiotes. When Kylan turned around, her Volf eyes reflected herself in the lens of Sarah's camera. The black rose tattoo under her left eye was glowing, and the rusting progress bar of the pocket watch gears had advanced to 47%. Remember, the rift of the symbiote has never been a defect. Sarah pressed the shutter. The moment the flash went off, Kylan saw in the photo that her wolf-shaped silhouette was growing a human arm, and the fragments of Matilda's work permit formed a complete gear pattern in her palm. The rain was getting heavier. Before rushing into the night, Kylan took one last look at the church. The gear-shaped birthmark on the Virgin Mary statue suddenly turned, revealing the engraved initials A, B, and N inside. She knew that the next stop, the Cambridge laboratory, would uncover the genetic secret jointly guarded by her mother and Serena, and the gear in her palm would eventually become the key to unlocking the time anchor. This episode ends, but the story continues. Subscribe now.